All right, and we are here. Welcome to another episode of Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show. I'm your host, Smitty. With me again this week, every week, Donnie Druin.
How's it going, man?
We're going. Neither of us are 100%,
time,
but yeah. It is playoff time.
We're on our Michael Jordan flu bullshit, so, the people need
Le'Veon
fantasy.
Bell.
That's right. Yeah,
Le'Veon Bell bowl game.
I did do pretty good in Wii Bowling the other night, so,
No, but anyways, a ton of fantasy stuff to talk about, obviously. We'll get into that. But I do want to mention first that we are part of the PodHub Network. Head to podhubnetwork.com. Check out us. Check out all the other shows. Bunch of great shows on there. That's podhubnetwork.com. Or social media at PodHub Network. Around the 412 is sponsored by Keeks Barbershop. Keeks Barbershop is located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. Open 10 to 7 Tuesday through Friday. 9 to 4 on Saturdays. And every Tuesday, Christian there does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, and nurses. He's also got Keeks Christmas Drive going on right now until December 20th, where he's giving $5 off your next hair service, whether it be that day or in the future. If you bring any toys, monetary donations, clothing, whatever it might be, to benefit the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. And to keep up with the Christmas spirit, this is the last week, man. Rocking around the 412. It ends Saturday. We're going to go... Well, actually, we're doing the show Monday, so I guess, we can take donations up until Monday. But we're going to get a lot of the stuff on Saturday. Me, Beefy, and our friend Sarge is coming with us to get stuff, too. But, yeah, we found 3 families. We're super excited to be able to give them a Christmas that they otherwise wouldn't be able to have. If you can believe it or not, one of the families actually has 8 kids. So, obviously,
wow.
A huge need for them at Christmas time. Yeah. So
is it Phillip Rivers?
It is not Phillip Rivers.
Okay.
It is somebody else that has... It's a single mother, actually. So, there's not even a father in the picture, which makes it, that much tougher, that much worse of a situation. But we're happy to be able to step in and at least make the Christmas a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, so we're giving 6 jerseys away, 2 pairs of Penguin tickets, a pair of Pirate tickets, a jersey, and a $50 Total Sports gift card for the people that participate, get involved, and donate their money to helping make these Christmases memorable for these kids. We don't take a single dollar from it. We provide the prizes, and you guys provide the money to go to the family. So every single dollar donated goes to these families, and then our own money will be put into giving you guys the prizes for doing so. For being such great people, getting involved with us, and really just helping us, like I said, make Christmas better for people that otherwise, might wake up on Christmas morning not having anything to open. It's a sad situation that fortunately I've never known, but I have seen it. So, it's a mission that means a lot to me, and I'm happy to be doing it this year. I know, I'm speaking for Tyler and Herb as well. Obviously, we're all in this together. And, well, Donnie, you're the 4th member of Around the 412.
Together. Yeah, shout out to Penn's Chronicles for recognizing the 4-member gang that is Around the 412.
Yeah, he was saying 4 members, so, because, we all have 1/4, so he acknowledges it's a 4-person show. Which reminds me, you gotta come back on the regular show.
Dude, it's been a minute since I've been on, huh?
Yeah. We haven't had anybody on in a while, actually. It's just been, our schedule has been so sporadic.
Yeah, and with the holidays approaching and everything, too, it's super hectic.
But okay, yeah, I think it's people came here to get advice for how they're going to win their playoff game. I actually started my playoffs last week in 4 different leagues, and I went 4-0 in those games. I mentioned on here last week that I made the playoffs as a 5-8 team, and I took down the top seed that I was playing. So
wow, props.
Yeah, I needed 5 points from Benny Snell and Carson Wentz as my last 2 players. Benny Snell had 2. And then Carson Wentz had negative going into the second half. But he ended up getting 20 point something. So I pulled it out, but, I'm a little weary of using Carson Wentz again. And it's not only Carson Wentz, because his weapons have been trash minus Zach Ertz.
Yeah, I think everything from the coaching down to the instability of the running game and, even the receivers he's throwing the ball to, it definitely hasn't helped him at all. But a little of it does fall on Carson Wentz himself.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to, I'm not super high on Carson Wentz. I think we've already seen his best football the year that he was playing out of his mind until he tore his ACL. I think that was the best football year to see Carson Wentz play. Yep. But, yeah, I also think that you need to surround him in an environment to succeed, and the Eagles just haven't done that.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in Philadelphia after this year. A lot of people think Doug Peterson will be on his way out.
That'd be
It's just a
crazy,
matter
man.
of opinion at this point. Yep. A
2
couple
years
of years
removed
removed from the Super Bowl. Yep.
What did he was an offensive coordinator, right? Before?
Defenses, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
You might be right. You're
For some reason, I thought he
geographically
came,
closer to Doug Peterson.
For some reason, I thought he came from an offensive background, but I could be wrong.
No, he was the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs from 2013 to 2015. So you're right.
Okay, so there's our Randy Fichtner replacement.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, absolutely.
But okay, as always, we're gonna do our top fives and stuff. We do have a couple of different things to throw your guys' way. With it being playoff time, we're gonna give you some guys that we think are going to be fantasy impact players, and what we mean is you look at the rest of their stretch run in these last couple games. Who are the guys that you want to target in those games, and also a buy or sell to kind of replace the over/under segment and the studs and duds. Because the studs and duds, what does that really help people out? I mean, we're talking about the past week. We're not talking about the future weeks anymore at that point. So really, we're just telling you guys what happened instead of what we think is going to happen at that point, which is pretty easy to do. So this way, we're going to try to give you guys some advice going forward. So let's start with the top 5 quarterbacks. I know that he's coming into this game a little banged up, short week. He said he's going to play. Lamar Jackson's going against the Jets. I mean, against the Jets, you could argue that anybody should be in the top 5, regardless of who the quarterback is. I mean, if I were sitting here, you could talk me into starting Devlin Hodges as a top 5 guy going against the Jets, which actually that's happening next week. So, but anyway, Lamar Jackson is my QB1 going against the Jets. Even he might be a little banged up. The weather conditions aren't looking that great for the game, but the season that Lamar Jackson's having every week, I'm going to put him up there. I actually didn't have him as QB1 last week, but I'm going to put him right back in due to the matchup here. And that's pretty much all I got to say. It's Lamar Jackson going against the Jets. So.
Yeah, even a banged up Lamar Jackson, and even if we want to call him banged up at this point, I mean he's already declared that he's playing. It's just a quad bruise, from my understanding. And while I'm super sure that's painful, and I probably couldn't play an NFL game with that. These athletes are superior health-wise, strength-wise, all of us. So I think Jackson will be good to go. I don't think there's going to be any difference in the way he plays. And if there's no difference in kind of carrying that logic, then Lamar Jackson is definitely the quarterback one going into this week.
So okay, yeah. So with that being said, he's your quarterback one as well.
Yes.
Okay. My QB2 was my QB1 last week. I'm going with Pat Mahomes here against Denver. Denver, not a bad matchup, especially for quarterbacks. Well, when I say not bad, I mean they're kind of like middle of the pack. So, but I talked about it last week. I just feel like Kansas City's offense is just getting there. They're pretty much on the level that you expect to see Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, the running back by committee approach that they have. Sammy Watkins mixing in. I am very high on Mecole Hardman. Robinson as well. The offense, they have a lot of weapons, and when you have Pat Mahomes running the show, a healthy Pat Mahomes, I mean, I know he said he re-aggravated something in that game, but, he went out in practice today and said everything was all good. So I expect him to be a top 3 play pretty much week in and week out, so long as he's good to go. And against Denver, I mean, like I said, it's not necessarily a shy-away matchup at all. They're kind of middle of the pack, and I just feel like Kansas City's offense is really getting things going, and it's Pat Mahomes.
Yeah, even with the potential hand injury that Mahomes supposedly has, you got to roll him out there. And even Andy Reid said nothing is wrong with his hand. He should be good to go. Mm-hmm. Denver's defense hasn't exactly been terrible, but they haven't been the Denver Broncos defense we are accustomed to in years past. So Patrick Mahomes is actually my quarterback 3. Every sentiment you just applied to Mahomes will be going towards my quarterback 2, which is Drew Brees versus the Indianapolis Colts. This is the first time he's cracked my top 5 this year, and kind of like you said, the Chiefs are starting to put things together, and so are the Saints offense. Drew Brees had his best performance 2019 last week. It looks like everything is coming together for New Orleans at the right time, both for their actual team and fantasy football players as well. So I think Drew Brees continues his strong performance against the Indianapolis Colts this week. And I think the Colts are kind of in the same boat as the Broncos. They don't necessarily have a defense that scares me. Drew Brees is going to be playing inside of another dome this week. And as long as Michael Thomas is catching footballs from him, and he has Alvin Kamara and Latavius Murray at his expense, I gotta like his chances.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're talking about New Orleans offense really getting things going at the right time, and that's absolutely true. But I think that you would say that sans Alvin Kamara, because really I don't know what's going on there. It's a weird situation. A drop-off of 16 total touchdowns so far this year. They're not, it doesn't seem like the utilization has been there the same way. They're just throwing him the ball behind the line of scrimmage and expecting to catch lightning in a bottle every single time, and that's a guy that can hit a home run every time he touches the ball, but it's just not happening right now. So you got to adjust that. You still want to get him the ball, but you got to be more creative than what they've done with him this year. And we were kind of talking about that last week. Did we start to see more and more of Latavius Murray, or maybe they just continue to throw the ball to? I mean, Jared Cook, who knows what's going on with him? He's in concussion protocol right now. That could be a weapon that they don't have on Sunday against the Colts. But Drew Brees is actually my QB3. So, I mean, as you mentioned, he's throwing to Michael Thomas, which is the best weapon in football. Hey, he might throw one out there to Taysom Hill a time or two.
Yep.
The Saints offense, as you mentioned, you could say, take everything I said about Kansas City offense and kind of put it right there with New Orleans. They haven't really missed a beat from going from Drew Brees to Teddy Bridgewater back to Drew Brees. New Orleans has just kept it rolling this year, and still pretty, high favorites in the NFC. I mean, what a game that was against the 49ers. People really hoping to see that rematch, I know. And we'll see about that. But, yeah, I mean, to kind of switch gears here to the 49ers, what did you think about, because that's supposed to be the top defense in football, and they gave up 42 points?
Yeah, so two things. One, I think teams will definitely use the tape from that game to try to find all of the leaks and the holes in the 49ers defense. But on the other side of the token, not every offense has a mastermind offense coordinator / head coach like Sean Payton. Not everybody has a Drew Brees or Alvin Kamara or a Michael Thomas or Jared Cook on the other hand as well. So while you can look and say, oh, hey, they're weak in this area and that area. Okay, well, one, how are you going to stop it? And two, it's not like the 49ers aren't going to watch the very same tape and make adjustments on the defensive side of the ball as well.
Yeah. We don't really talk defense that much on here. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And also, when we get to the wide receivers, there's a point that I wanted to make about San Francisco's defense. But we'll get to that when we get it. Anyways, Drew Brees is my quarterback 3. So we have the same 3 quarterbacks as our top 3. We just flip-flop Mahomes and Brees.
I think we're going to have the same top 5.
Really?
Yes.
Because my last 2 typically don't pop up in my top 5.
Never mind.
Yeah. My QB4 coming off an absolute monster week. I am ready for the clown pictures to be broken out. Jameis Winston going against Detroit here. Now, he's lost a weapon in Mike Evans. It looks like it could be for the season. Pretty significant hamstring injury. And that happened on a touchdown, nonetheless. But Jameis Winston is just so weird. He could throw 3 interceptions, but still get you 45 fantasy points. And we just saw that happen this past week. Now he's doing this at Detroit defense, which is absolutely abysmal. They're in the bottom 10. I know that they're not going to have Mike Evans. Is it finally time that we see more from, I'm not even going to say it, actually. I don't even want to say it. Are we going to see more from O.J. Howard this week?
No. God, yeah. What are we doing this episode?
No, I really still... It's going to be interesting to see if Chris Godwin can continue to produce. You're kind of talking about if you take away Antonio Brown from Juju Smith-Schuster, what's going to happen? So we'll see what Chris Godwin continues to do. Anyway, Jameis Winston in a matchup here against Detroit with the way that he's played. I kind of had trouble with my 4 and 5 here, but let's get your number 4 first.
Yeah, so my number 4 is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo versus the Atlanta Falcons. Jimmy Garoppolo the last couple weeks and the whole 49ers offense actually has been red hot. We saw them drop over 40 points last week against the New Orleans Saints. They get another NFC South team this week in the Atlanta Falcons. Not that much better of a defense. Yeah, I was about to say you can even make an argument that they were worse defense. It's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's proving that he's worth every dollar of the fat contract that he got, and Kyle Shanahan's helping him a lot with his play calling. He's got all the weapons in the world to work with, and yeah, I think as long as Garoppolo is healthy and standing up, he's going to be a fringe top 5 player every week, just depending on the matchup.
question for you, and I just thought about this now. How do you compare this year from Jimmy Garoppolo and the 49ers to last year for Jared Goff and the Rams? Because I'm seeing a lot of similarities from that offense.
There are.
And I almost wonder what next year looks like for the San Fran offense.
There are a lot of similarities. Pretty much the only difference between this offense and the Rams offense is the 49ers don't necessarily have like a singular workhorse running back like they did with Todd Gurley. They don't use a lot of the like jet motion. They don't use as much of it as the Rams do. But you'll see a lot of like offensive similarities between Shanahan and McVay. I mean, they were on the same coaching staff in Washington just a few years ago when McVay was, the Redskins quarterback coach and Shanahan was their offensive coordinator. Nonetheless, I think the difference rests within two qualities. One, teams will have a full season of, and I hate to keep bringing this up, but game film. They'll have proper film to look back, study tendencies, study the play calling, study the formations, all that good stuff. They'll have a whole year's worth of this offense to, kind of look back on, because it's not like Shanahan's going to say, hey, this works great, let's change it. He's going to keep a lot of this, same stuff, the same bulk of his playbook. And two, it'll come down to adjustments. Sean McVay, as great of a coach as he is, he's not the best at adjusting. We see the lack of in-game adjustments he gets slandered for. You can make an argument that cost him a Super Bowl against the New England Patriots last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see. It's going to be up to Kyle Shanahan to make the proper adjustments to keep his offense playing at the level it is right now. But no, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of similarities between the two teams this year.
Yeah, and I think that I'm mainly looking at, because if you look at it as a whole, as you mentioned, the Rams running back situations obviously differently. Their receiving situations differently too, because if you take whoever off that Rams receiving core and put them on the Niners, that's the stud for the Niners receiving core. But I'm looking at the quarterback and the offensive mastermind from both those teams, and I'm just looking at the similarities there, thinking, how much is Kyle Shanahan, doing for Jimmy Garoppolo to make him look like this? And if you took
we'll
him
see,
away,
because when Garoppolo played in New England, there were a lot of people that suggested that the Patriots shipped Tom Brady away and make Jimmy G the starter. He played that well underneath Bill Belichick. But, if we want to make that argument, look how many other quarterbacks got paid off of playing underneath Bill Belichick.
Yeah, Matt Cassell.
Yeah, Matt Castle, Jacoby Brissett played in the Patriots uniform, and he ended up signing with the Indianapolis Colts, and now Jimmy Garoppolo. But no, you're absolutely right. I think Jimmy G is a little bit more of a capable quarterback than Jared Goff is. I think Jared Goff has a lot of concerns, if we take away Sean McVay. But, that's just part of the relationships that have to occur in the NFL. You can't necessarily have one or the other. If you want to bring up the, who's more important to the Patriots, Brady or Belichick, it's a 1A, 1B conversation. The Patriots aren't great without either of those two or the camera crew.
I was just saying before you said that, I don't think that you'll ever get like an actual. I mean, that debate could go on till the end of time. Which one is more important to that dynasty? But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the Washington coaching tree, if you will, that you just mentioned, all the guys that were on that staff and the New England quarterbacks that have come through that system, it's crazy. How many guys would those teams want to have back? Maybe not necessarily New England right now, but when they are in search for another quarterback and Jimmy G's still in his prime, lighting it up for the 49ers. They're going to miss him. And then you look at the Redskins,
Definitely.
who they've let go. Yeah.
Yeah, Washington thinks that they have their guy in the future in Dwayne Haskins. So, while that's, yet to be seen, I think they would definitely take a for sure thing as the offensive play caller in either Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay right now.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue, I would argue that Dwayne Haskins has more ability than Jared Goff. So pair him with, Sean McVay and see what happens.
Right, and you could absolutely make that argument. You take Dwayne Haskins off of the Redskins, put him in a system underneath Sean McVay in LA with a bunch of weapons around him, and maybe we're talking about Dwayne Haskins as a Rookie of the Year candidate right now. Put Jared Goff in a shitty Redskins situation, and we're calling him a bust from day one.
Yep. Okay, and then my QB5. This guy has been
back to fantasy.
Has been absolutely lighting it up. Ryan Tannehill going against Houston here. Houston's defense, I don't care what they show up wearing. They could come dressed as Santa Claus and his elves. It's not going to matter. Ryan Tannehill has been on fire. Houston's defense is absolutely atrocious, regardless of how they dress coming into the game. SWAT team, average Joes, doesn't matter. They could dress up as Donnie and I. They're not going to stop Tennessee's offense. Ryan Tannehill's going to continue to light them up. And now that I'm saying this, I expect him to be a bottom 5 play as opposed to a top 5.
He's my quarterback 5 as well, Ryan Tannehill, and he's actually going to be one of my waiver wire pickups of the week because he's still only owned in 51% of leagues. I don't know how. I couldn't even tell you. Could not even tell you. But no, Ryan Tannehill, since taking over as the quarterback for the Titans, he's been nothing short of productive. I've got it written down right here that 17 points is his lowest output since he took over the starting role as quarterback. So that's just a testament to him breaking away from Adam Gase and having a solid team. Yeah, having a solid team that plays great defense, runs the football. Has 1 or 2 receivers that can get the job done.
I was a huge fan of Ryan Tannehill coming out of Texas A&M. He went 8th overall to the Dolphins, and I was skeptical of the landing spot. And I mean, look at how different things have been. And his teammates were talking about how he kind of. And he even said he kind of needed to be a backup to realize that he needed to be a starter. He said he had trouble keeping his mouth shut in the quarterback room, knowing that he wasn't the starter, couldn't say things that you had to be a starter to say. And now he has command of that offense again. They're running the ball effectively, but they can throw the ball effectively. All of a sudden, I think A.J. Brown has an argument over Josh Jacobs to be Offensive Rookie of the Year, especially, Josh Jacobs' health being totally up in the air. But yeah, that offense has just been spectacular since Ryan Tannehill took over, and that's literally what happened. I mean, that offense was nowhere near what it was doing under Marcus Mariota. They make the switch to Ryan Tannehill, and it's no coincidence that the offense has been going the way that they are. The defense is, very good in itself as well. They're probably being overshadowed right now by the offense, but when you have players like Kevin Byard on the back end, as good as it gets at the safety position, and then they're back to the playoff race, and it's all because of the switch to Ryan Tannehill. What a move by Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, what a ballsy move, too, because it's not every day that you see a quarterback taken in the top 2 of the NFL draft, and a couple of years down the road, you see a backup quarterback coming from another team and end up taking his job and end up lighting it up like we've seen Tannehill do.
Yeah. It's just, it's a testament to him to continue to work and know that, all I need is another chance.
Yeah, that also raises questions about not only Adam Gase but the entire culture in Miami as well.
Yeah, you take a look in the mirror. What were we doing wrong? Do you see what this guy's doing in Tennessee?
Exactly. Yeah. I know this is a completely different situation, but if you want to take Mika Fitzpatrick for example, it's pretty bad when your second-year player wants to get out that badly,
and you can't find an actual fit for him anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The argument when he was coming here was he's more natural of a slot defender, but we're going to play him at safety because we have to, with Sean Davis being out.
Well, apparently he wasn't a big fan of playing any quarterback position just because he didn't like how he's being used, and he's being used practically everywhere all over the field. But that's because he's such a versatile guy. But that's another argument for another day.
Right. Okay, top 5 running backs. Number 1 for me. It's going to be the same thing when we get the receivers, so get used to it. Christian McCaffrey here going against Seattle. Not, a mouthwater matchup by any means, but it's Christian McCaffrey. The Panthers, it's going to be their second game under a new head coach.
He's averaging 28 points a game. 28 fantasy points a game.
28 fantasy points per game.
Say less.
This guy, I understand that there's quarterbacks, obviously, that have more points. Michael Thomas, if you're in a PPR league, might have more points as well. I'm not totally sure on that, so don't quote me. But Christian McCaffrey's got to be the fantasy football MVP this year, I would think.
Undoubtedly, yeah. Either him or Lamar Jackson. It's like 1A, 1B for me.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, probably because people were probably taking him as their second quarterback. If your QB1 didn't pan out, all of a sudden you have him there every week. Yeah. Yeah, oh, God. Yeah. So who's your other quarterback besides Lamar?
Kyler Murray.
Oh, okay. Lamar Light.
Lamar Light. Yeah, we'll see. I think he's in a perfect situation, so it's completely up to him to grow and develop. But I mean, with Cliff Kingsbury, I saw it firsthand last Sunday. Um, all of the tools are there for him to be a phenomenal quarterback in the league.
Yeah, I mean, watching on TV, I don't know, how different it was watching it there. It looks like there were a lot of plays to be made that could have been made. I mean, you look at the T.J. Watt interception. What's he doing not just running that ball?
He had all the room in the world to take that in for a touchdown. I think that just comes with overthinking and trying to process things too quickly as a rookie quarterback. So all of the mistakes and everything wrong with Kyler can easily be fixed. It's just going to take some time and some adjustment from him on his part.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so yeah, my running back 2, once again, just waiting for like a huge game. Really thought that the switch to Eli would help him based off last year. But they're playing Miami this week, so I'm going to go with Saquon. It's also supposed to rain, so I think it's going to be a run-heavy game. I think that Saquon's going to get fed, and, just based off the potential there, I think that he's got to be in the mix for a top 3 play every week at the position, even though he hasn't warranted that. You're just, like I said, waiting for that week to come, and listen, if it's not going to happen against Miami in the rain where you're going to be running the ball 30 times, it's not coming at all. So,
yeah, if there was any week for Saquon Barkley to bust out a game-changing performance and win your fantasy football championship, it's going to be in a rainy situation against the Miami Dolphins defense. So, all of the cards have fallen in fantasy football's, players' favor. So we'll see if Saquon can actually, get some offensive help this game, and we'll see if he can score more than 14 points.
Yeah. So is that your okay? Go ahead.
That is not, no, sorry. I actually don't have him in my top 5 this week. A big roller coaster from last week when I was standing on top of the hill proclaiming that he was back. My running back 2 is going to be Dalvin Cook versus the Los Angeles Chargers. But I just think Dalvin, whenever he's healthy, is usually a top 3 running back in the league, and he's sometimes not even 3 or 2, just depending on the matchup. Dalvin Cook, he's been heavily involved both in the rushing and passing game. The Chargers defense, while their front 7 is good, they don't necessarily scare me. Dalvin Cook isn't necessarily matchup proof like we have seen Christian McCaffrey to be, but you're not going to find a whole lot of opportunities where Dalvin Cook's not going to be in your top 5.
Yeah, so I have Dalvin Cook in my top 5. I'm actually at 4. Derrick Henry, I went with at 3, just because, like I mentioned, Tennessee's offense has been on a roll. Derrick Henry, the last 5 weeks, has gone over 23 points. So, I mean, going against Houston here, they're worse against the pass than the run. So, Tennessee, we'll see. But Tennessee would rather run the ball, I think, and kind of have that set up the pass. They've just been feeding Derrick Henry like crazy. I still think Derrick Henry gets his, especially, this is going to be a close game. They're going to want to grind it out. I think we're talking like a one-possession game regardless of the way that it goes. But I still think that Derrick Henry has a top 3 day, even if Tennessee's passing game kind of leads the ship, if you will.
Yeah, Derrick Henry is my running back 3 as well. It's a testament to the workhorse back that he is. I went into this fantasy football season proclaiming that he wasn't going to have, the year that he did last year, or so even continue the ending of the season that he had last year. I was not a believer in his ability to, one, stay healthy and to produce at the rate that he did, and he proved me wrong. I was absolutely wrong about that. Derrick Henry, it's crazy because he's such a big dude, yet he's so fast now, Joe, for how big he is. And the Tennessee Titans are definitely a run first play action team. We were talking about it last week. Dion Lewis is there, and you would have thought
Why
that.
did they give him a contract?
2 years ago that looked like a really good contract just because of his usage, but I mean now it's the Derrick Henry show. But to not fault them, you're going to want to give Derrick Henry the ball 20-25 games, 20-25 times a game if he's going to play like this.
Yeah, they paid him what, $7 million a season on a free agent contract?
I think so, something like 6 or 7. Yeah.
It's just when you give a guy that much money at that position, the running back position, even if he doesn't necessarily fit, if he doesn't fit what you're doing, you shouldn't have brought him in anyway. And if you are bringing him in, you would think that you would find a way to incorporate him more into the offense. Now, I understand Derrick Henry's kind of taken the reins and not given them back, but you look at the beginning of last year, the first 3 quarters of the season, that was a completely open backfield where Dion Lewis could have stolen the show. He could have stolen the touches because Derrick Henry wasn't doing it until the last month of the season, and it just didn't happen for him either.
Lewis signed a 4-year, $20 million contract.
4-year, 20?
Yep.
Okay, so $5 million a season. All right.
Not terrible, but still, you're kind of throwing away $5 million per season if you're not gonna necessarily use him like that.
Right. I mean, $5 million per season is not, anything to scoff at. That's
Not at all. That's more money than I'll ever see.
Yeah. it's a very good point. Even putting it into perspective with us, yeah, it's a huge amount of money, but NFL related, you're still talking about like a starting caliber player. Okay, so my RB4 is going to be Dalvin Cook going to the Chargers. You kind of already mentioned him already. The season that he's having is ridiculous. He's kind of, he obviously has the shoulder injury and a little bit of a chest issue as well. It looks like kind of, all grouped in together. But he's still been a productive back. And, I mean, I can tell you firsthand that he's carrying one of my teams. So, with the production or lack of that I've gotten from Saquon, he's kind of picked up the slack as my RB1, Saquon taking the back seat to that. Dalvin Cook against the Chargers here. The only thing that I worry about is if Minnesota gets up, too early and stops passing it, but he would still, get on the ground. I think that Madison could mix in a little bit more with Dalvin Cook, having injury issues that he may or may not have. I mean, who knows where he's at exactly health-wise, having played through it. But if they get up too big in this game against the Chargers, we might see Madison mix in more than you would like to as a Dalvin Cook owner. But, I think that if you have Dalvin Cook in your roster, you're obviously playing him. And, just the potential there to score a touchdown like he has been most weeks, I mean, that puts him in the top 5 mix every single week.
No, you're correct. That's exactly why I have him as my running back, too. My running back 4 is going to be Nick Chubb versus the Arizona Cardinals. And I was a little, precarious on putting Chubb in my top 5 just because we saw what the Cardinals were able to somewhat limit the Steelers' backfield to. But then I remembered the Steelers don't have running back like Nick Chubb. And, therefore I think the Browns do a lot better job of, 1, getting Nick Chubb continuous carries, and 2, getting him in space, where he's more prone to break tackles, break long runs. So, Arizona Cardinals defense is not scary. A dude named Duck dropped 23 on them last week. So I think, the playoff chances in Arizona are obviously gone. They don't have a whole lot to play for. They're not really an inspired football team right now. The Browns, on the other hand, are still in the playoff hunt. They absolutely need to win this game on the road. And I think their key to success of the playoff car is riding Nick Chubb all the way to the end zone. So,
I'm not too confident in my number 5 pick here of Ezekiel Elliott going against the Rams. We talked about the Rams defense being so up and down. You never know what you're getting. The game they had against the Ravens where they couldn't stop a nosebleed, but then they come out against the Cardinals, who are actually a pretty good running offense, at least going into that game, and held them to 7 points. But you never know what you're getting from the Rams. I don't know that they have been bad. I'm not sure exactly how good they've been this year. But the Cowboys' offense should be going through that offensive line. I mean, that's the strength of their team. You should be able to run the football. I understand that Aaron Donald's on the other side of that offensive line. But, triple team him. I don't know. There's got to be a way for that offensive line to dominate the line of scrimmage, at least enough for a running back like Ezekiel Elliott, who you paid very handsomely to get the rock. And, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see how Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been a top 5 play more often than not this year.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at his numbers right now. If I told you that Zeke was averaging 18 points per game and he was the number 6 ranked running back in, fantasy football, you would think, hey, that's about what he does every year. But for whatever reason, as for example, I'm a Zeke owner, I feel like he's had a really disappointing season, despite him, quietly putting up the numbers he has. Part of that might be Tony Pollard taking over the offense. Part of it might be the lack of success of the overall winning success that Dallas has had. But it's just the eye test is Zeke hasn't looked like he has in years past.
Yeah, and I mean, that's good that, that's all fine and dandy that he's RB6 total, but the problem with looking at that number just as that is that doesn't mean he's in the top 6 every single week. So he could finish his RB1 one week, have an absolute blow-up week, finish 20 points higher than anybody else, but then finish outside the top 15 the following week. And I kind of think that that's the season that he's had. It's more about the consistency, not having that floor that you would expect from Ezekiel Elliott, because the ceiling has still been there, but you don't know that he's going to hit that, coveted 15 to 18 point floor that you want from your running back number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're absolutely right. My running back 5 is Leonard Fournette versus the Oakland Raiders. Had a bit of a down week last week. Only had 9 fantasy points, I believe, last week. Gardner Minshew was back in the offense. I said that last week, and Fournette didn't have that great of a outing. Granted, they're going against the Oakland Raiders defense this week, so not exactly a frown away matchup for Leonard Fournette. I feel like you could just put this on repeat for me every week. Volume is king. Leonard Fournette touches the football almost more than anybody else in the National Football League. And with opportunity comes scoring, and I got to put Leonard Fournette in my top 5.
Yeah, I mean, that's a guy that I've had in my top 5, and I'm sorry, who they face Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. I mean, that's definitely a matchup that you certainly have every reason to have him in the top 5. Probably would be right outside the top 5 for me, and definitely can make the case over Ezekiel Elliott because of what we were just talking about. You have no idea what you're getting from Ezekiel Elliott. He might be the safer play over Ezekiel Elliott, but yeah, Leonard Fournette pretty consistently this season has been a top 7 running back. As you mentioned, just the touches, and it's nice to see if you are a Leonard Fournette owner, whether it be, dynasty, so going forward, or just this season, or redraft, that he has some pass-catching volume to his game now.
Yep, thank you, TJ Yeldon, for not being there.
He's in Buffalo, and they're not doing anything with him, right?
They're not, dude, they're not even looking at him in Buffalo.
Like, does he even get a helmet?
Yeah. Maybe we'll see. It might be the Halloween costume helmet.
Yeah. All right, so wide receiver, I mean, we could plug in last week's show at this point and just start off this segment because Michael Thomas is number 1. Going against Indianapolis here, as you already mentioned. They're playing in a dome, so it's essentially just like, still like a home environment for New Orleans in that aspect where, they love that environment. They're used to playing in a dome. They play in a dome at home. Now they go to Indianapolis on the road, but still get to play in a dome. So you don't have any road breeze, if you will. People talk about road Ben. But anyway, Michael Thomas here, the safest wide receiver play that we've seen probably in years. I mean, the season that he's having, consistently wide receiver 1 from a fantasy standpoint, and from a real life standpoint, just we're watching history be made essentially at that position.
Yeah, he's setting NFL records left and right. And he's doing it after he got paid, which is something you normally don't see when it comes to NFL contracts. It's wide receiver 1 for Michael Thomas. I think we've had him wide receiver 1 since week 3.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, the pace that he has set and the standard and the bar that he's raised for every receiver in the National Football League going forward. My wide receiver 2 is going to be Chris Godwin versus the Detroit Lions. We'll see. You brought up a very good point. We'll see what Godwin looks like without Mike Evans, to draw away the attention. You made the Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster comparison, which I felt like was fair. But I feel like Chris Godwin is a little bit more better route runner. I think he's faster than Juju, which will definitely help him, should he see that attention. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers love throwing the football so much. Sometimes they even do it to the other team more so. Chris Godwin's he's a volume guy. Whether or not Mike Evans will be there, we'll see if that remains the same. But right now, I have to put him in my top 2. So yeah, it's a very inviting matchup versus Detroit this week.
Yeah, Chris Godwin's my wide receiver 2. For all the without Mike Evans there, all the attention to be focused on him, and that's obviously you hope other guys can open things up for him. At the same time, if you want to look at it from a positive standpoint, he's going to get the majority of the targets that Mike Evans is. I don't know why I was call him Michael Evans. That Mike Evans isn't. But Chris Godwin this year, it's been a breakout season, as I think both of us really thought was going to happen coming into the year. And it's just he's become a true wide receiver 1, and I think that I obviously brought up the Juju Smith-Schuster thing, so we'll see. But, I think that Jameis Winston at least brings a little bit more than what we've seen in the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh, at least up until, Duck Hodges is starting to find his game, I think. It's really more about, is Randy Fichtner going to open things up for him? But, that's a different story for a different day. But just getting back to Tampa Bay's offense, it's pretty much the Chris Godwin show without Mike Evans, and we'll see if he can handle that load. That's what
we'll see. That's what she said. This is what it's all about.
Yep.
My wide receiver 3 is DeAndre Hopkins versus the Tennessee Titans. Hopkins, I feel like, has quietly had an up and down year in terms of production. I mean, he's still obviously one of the most talented receivers in the NFL. But sometimes it feels like Deshaun Watson can't necessarily connect with him. Granted, I think Watson still pulls 14 to 15 points a game as a solid floor. He's going against the Tennessee Titans this week. Not a super favorable matchup. But nonetheless, as long as DeAndre Hopkins has Deshaun Watson throwing him the football, you definitely have to put him top 5 consideration. I have him at number 3.
Yeah, I have him as my number 4. If I don't know where he ranks among receivers this year in total points. I don't know if you have that right there to pull up. But I think that if he is in the top, 5, 6, whatever it might be, we could be talking about a similar situation at the wide receiver position as we just did with Ezekiel Elliott at running back, where you kind of just, as an owner, don't feel like that's happening.
He's the number 3 receiver in fantasy football. He's averaging about 18 points per game. That's
insane. Okay, so I'm a DeAndre Hopkins owner, actually, in a league, and I can tell you right now, I do not feel like that. I don't feel like he's been wide receiver 3.
Absolutely, yeah. The lowest point total he's scored this season has been 7.
And you know what? I took him 4th overall in a league, so that might be playing into it as well. As you mentioned, we've had Michael Thomas as wide receiver 1 since week 3. Well, before that, I was putting DeAndre Hopkins as wide receiver 1.
Yep.
So, I kind of thought that what we're talking about with Michael Thomas would be DeAndre Hopkins, where it's kind of just this is wide receiver 1 because him and Watson, QB wide receiver combo doesn't get much better than that. So, but anyway, he's my wide receiver 4. My wide receiver 3 is Tyreek Hill going against Denver. Kansas City, as I mentioned, I just feel like the offense is starting to click. He only needs one play to make his fantasy day, essentially. And going against Denver, I'm curious to see how things match up. That's not the same Denver secondary that we've seen in the past. I mean, it's not that long ago that we saw Chris Harris, Aqib Talib, and Bradley Roby shutting teams down, but that's not there anymore. It's just Chris Harris.
An older Chris Harris at that.
An older Chris Harris. And, we'll see what he's not going to be able to keep up with Tyreek Hill, so it's going to be interesting to see what they do over the top there, but I still think Tyreek Hill gets his, and he's my wide receiver 3 this week.
Yeah, Tyreek is actually my wide receiver number 5. Everything you just said, it takes one play of Tyreek blowing by Chris Harris to knock you a 12-point game at minimum. So he's in the number 5 spot for me. Just his big playability. Take away his route running, the short slants that Mahomes likes to throw to him, where he can take a 10-yard slant and turn into a 60-yard touchdown. Take away his route running, the way he's able to get in and out of his breaks super duper fast. His footwork on the sideline. He's pretty much a complete receiver, and he runs like his ass is on fire. That's only just a positive for him. But my wide receiver number 4 is going to be Kenny Golladay versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is the matchup that a lot of fantasy football players are circling this week as a potential league winner, since a lot of fantasy leagues are in their championships this week. And I gotta agree. I think despite having the lack of Matthew Stafford in Detroit, I think Kenny Golladay still is able to get plenty of targets. It's against one of the worst defenses in the league, the worst secondaries in the league. And Galladay's healthy again, so I think people are ready for him to have another big game like he did on Thanksgiving.
I love Kenny Golladay. The league I just mentioned, I have DeAndre Hopkins. Kenny Golladay is my number 2.
Ooh, solid.
So, yeah. Okay, so Hopkins was my number 4. And then Julio Jones going against San Fran, and this is why I said I want to bring up San Fran's defense. They give up the fewest points to receivers in total this year, even after that game against New Orleans. But Richard Sherman's not going to be playing, and D Ford's not going to be playing on the pass rush. So I feel like there's a little bit of hope here for a Julio Jones top 5 fantasy game. It's Julio Jones, so obviously he has the ability to do that. We'll see what Matt Ryan brings to the table this week against the San Fran defense. But like I mentioned, D Ford's not going to be getting after him. Obviously Nick Bosa and company, DeForest Buckner, those guys are still to be getting after him. But no Richard Sherman. We'll see what they decide to do with Julio Jones there. With that being the case, going back to Atlanta's offense, though, obviously no Calvin Ridley. So, you got to rely on guys like Russell Gage and Austin Hooper to open things up for Julio Jones. I think they do enough to an extent where Julio Jones, just based off his capability, is still a top 5 play this week.
Yeah, just looking at his last 4 games, it is 10, 14, 11, and 11 again, just in terms of overall fantasy production.
Not
but I
great for
will
him.
say, I will say, with Calvin Ridley being out, it doesn't matter who's going to be on the defense. Julio Jones should see somewhere between 8 to 10 targets this week at a minimum if, the Falcons are expected to keep pace in this game. If the Matt Ryan of late shows up, I think Julio could have a field day against the 49ers.
I'm with it. I'm with it.
I'm with it.
So who's your... Oh, you said Tyreek Hill was your number 5.
Yeah, Tyreek is my number 5. Yep.
Alrighty, tight ends. I had I had a little bit of trouble with this, just because my tight end 2 has really been getting on a good page with his quarterback, but I'm still going Kittle here at number 1, going against Atlanta. You mentioned how creative the San Fran offense is, and obviously it's a run-first offense, play action, but when they are throwing the ball, George Kittle's that number 1 option, most dynamic tight end in the league. Even though some argue he can't block, I don't know where the hell that came from, but the dude's an absolute stud, even with the broken bones in his ankle. Pretty much set up San Fran to win that game on Sunday. Who knows what happens if he doesn't get all those yards after the catch. San Fran might just opt to, let the thing go to overtime. But he makes a big play after the catch that not many tight ends do. At that position, you don't see that dynamic of a playmaker. George Kittle brings that to the table. Going against Atlanta here, not by any means a bad matchup for a tight end, and even though they are going to run the ball a lot with Raheem Mostert and company, I still love George Kittle.
Yeah, he's my tight end 1 this week. You can copy and paste everything you just said for him. He's the featured pass catcher and a very creative offense. He's going against a defense that doesn't keep me up at night. While the Falcons do have a somewhat respectable secondary, I think Kittle will be able to pretty much, have his way with anybody on that defense. So, yeah, as long as Kittle's healthy, and like you pointed out, he's even not 100% healthy at this moment. That's just a testament to one, his work ethic on the field, and to the 49ers and how much they love getting him the ball. Yeah,
and then, so I mentioned my tight end 2 kind of getting on the same page with his quarterback. If you look at Zach Ertz, what he's done recently, coming off a 2-touchdown performance. So what he's done his last, 5 weeks, he did have a dud game in there, but 20, 13, 21, he had a 3-point game in there, and then 25 finished his tight end 1 this last week. Goes against Washington here, which is a bottom 10 defense in terms of giving up points to tight ends, so I love Zach Ertz here against Washington.
Yeah, Zach Ertz is my tight end 2 this week as well. What a bounce back game he had last week. I think he had somewhere around 30 points. It looks like things are finally starting to click for Zach Ertz. When on the show we have, I don't want to say slandered him, but we've been very critical of him at certain times. But good for him. I mean, you draft Zach Ertz with the expectations that weeks like last week certainly do happen. They do. And, to quote the great Mike Tomlin, the standard is the standard. And Zach Ertz is no exception to that. So we embrace him, we acknowledge him, and he will unleash hell in December.
And he's on to Washington.
He's on to Washington.
But no, everything that you just said, you're finally getting to reap the benefits of drafting him, because it was probably a coin flip for a lot of people between him and George Kittle, and Travis Kelce was probably already off the board. And up until this point, it looked like Kittle. Or I shouldn't say this point, because as I mentioned, Ertz is kind of putting it together for 4 out of the last 5 weeks. But for a lot of the season, you're sitting there thinking, what did I do? Why did I take Zach Ertz in probably like the 3rd or 4th round? And, finally, you're seeing why, because he gives you that same type of ceiling as a top-flight receiver. So...
Yeah, absolutely agree. Travis Kelce is my tight end number 3. I hate to be basic and have the big 3.
Yeah,
up there, but Kelce hasn't had necessarily a disappointing season. He hasn't exactly popped off a lot of the times like we think he does, but regardless, Patrick Mahomes finds ways to get him involved every week. That's not going to change against the Denver Broncos defense this week. It's another tough divisional matchup. The teams know each other very well, obviously. I just think it comes down to making plays, and Travis Kelce is probably the playmaker at the tight end position.
Yeah, I'm with you, pretty much everything that you just said. I could keep saying it over and over again, but Kansas City's offense is really starting to put it together. Travis Kelce's a major piece of that. Tyreek Hill just needs one big play to make the game, but Travis Kelce's more of the volume guy in that passing offense. More targets at the tight end position than anybody else. He can stretch the field vertically as well, but he does a lot of work underneath too. I mean, everything I said about Kittle being dynamic, Travis Kelce's able to do as well. One of the better athletes at the position, if not the best. And week in and week out, you got to have him in your top 3, especially at such a depleted position.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's the big 3 tight end names at the position. I had trouble with the last 2. I don't know about you. I had a really hard time trying to find 4 and 5.
Well, you know how I feel about Austin Hooper. I know he didn't really have a great game last week coming off the injury, but I'm just hoping another week of practice. This is a tough matchup going against San Francisco. Don't give up a ton of points to tight ends, but we're talking about the tight end position where you got to really just rely on the tight end themselves and not go based off matchups, because you don't get a ton of production outside of the top couple guys anyway. So and I feel like Austin Hooper, if not with those top 3 guys, is the next guy out there. You could argue with like the Hunter Henry tier. And so that's why I'm going Austin Hooper here against San Fran. Up until the injury, was leading tight ends in fantasy points per game. And a good bet to get red zone looks should Atlanta get into the red zone against San Fran, because that's not even a sure thing. But as I mentioned, San Fran's defense is a little banged up this week. But yeah, if they get into the red zone, Matt Ryan's going to be looking his way, maybe Julio's way, obviously, too. But Austin Hooper's been a dynamic player for that Atlanta offense when he's on the field, and has been an absolute monster in the red zone.
No, you're absolutely right, and to every point you just made, Austin Hooper, prior to his injury, we were talking about him as finishing as the tight end 1 this year, and based off of where he was going in fantasy football drafts, he could be a very dark horse candidate for fantasy football MVP. But I'm not super sure on Austin Hooper's week. Like you said, maybe another week of practice benefits him.
Yeah.
It definitely should. Maybe another week of being healthy will benefit him as well. It's just not certainly a inviting matchup, and when you get outside of the top 3, big tight ends, you're kind of looking for matchups to play, and that wasn't one that kind of jumped off the page to me. So my tight end 4 is going to be Hunter Henry versus the Minnesota Vikings. Literally everything I just said about Austin Hooper, you can apply to Hunter Henry. I'm not pounding the table for Henry this week, but the tight end position is just hit or miss. You really got to just look at the playmakers you have available there. Kind of roll the dice, or take a shot in the dark. And Hunter Henry has proved what he could do at certain times throughout the season. We'll see what Minnesota's front 7, and the kind of challenges that they'll present him. But yeah, I got him at number 4. It's not a super confident 4 though.
Yeah, so we mentioned the big 3 tight ends, which those guys are pretty much all in the same class. And then you probably have Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, Mark Andrews, kind of like a breakout season for him. And then this guy's burst onto the scene as well. My tight end 5 is Darren Waller. And I talked about the ample opportunity in the Raiders' offense without Tyrell Williams really doing much, without Hunter Renfrow. So it really comes down to, is Derek Carr the quarterback that we saw up until this past 2 weeks, or is he the quarterback that we've seen these last 2 weeks? Because he's been absolutely atrocious. I mean, the Raiders as a whole have been atrocious. But, that passing game is going to run through Darren Waller. And, we don't know the status of Josh Jacobs. But really, with what he's playing through and where the Raiders are right now, clinging on to very little playoff hope, it probably makes more sense to just sit Jacobs down for the rest of the season, let him get his surgery, and if that would be the case, Darren Waller is literally the guy in that offense.
Yeah, just due to injuries and opportunity, Darren Waller is going to be a top 5 tight end almost every single week. And to kind of credit everything you just said, Darren Waller, might very well be the best pass catcher on that team, and it's all going to go back to Derek Carr whether he can get his shit together.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's just funny because you looked at a couple weeks ago, right before the abysmal loss to the Jets, and you saw their schedule down the stretch, and you're thinking the Raiders are going to make the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they strung together a couple games, and you're kind of looking around like, oh man, this shit really might happen.
Yeah.
And then the shit really did not happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's still, obviously with the draft capital that they have in the next couple years and everything like that, and they're such a young team, they're ahead of schedule with the season that they've had anyway. I mean, pretty much playing with house money. But, yeah, it's just the last couple weeks have just, they can pretty much give up hope for this season at least.
Yeah, and it's not such a bad thing either. I think
No.
everybody in Oakland or next to Las Vegas kind of planned, for there to be a couple rough stretch of years. But as long as they keep acquiring young talent, as long as they keep molding them, and finding guys like Darren Waller, I think they'll end up being okay.
Yeah. I mean, you looked at this past draft class for them. Cleveland Farrells looked good. Jonathan Abram, who was my favorite rookie that they drafted, didn't even get to make an impact this year. And then obviously Josh Jacobs, who I don't love taking running backs in the first round, but he's a 3-down back. He's been a stud when he's been on the field when he's healthy. And a nice find, in the middle rounds in Max Crosby. So I think that the Raiders actually had a really good draft this past year, but they got to stack those.
Definitely.
Trayvon Mullen too, with the cornerback position. He's looked pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, Foster Moreau, tight end from LSU, looked good too.
Okay, so waiver wire ads. You kind of already mentioned your quarterback because he's still owned in like just 50% of leagues for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'm gonna double check that because I just want to make sure because that's an asinine number for what he's been doing.
Yeah, so I shot pretty low in percentages this week. I'm just looking for, if you're really desperate here. This guy's actually had a nice couple of weeks here. He's strung together. Mitchell Trubisky, owned in 21% of fantasy leagues in Yahoo. The matchups with Green Bay, so it's not mouthwatering by any means. It's a divisional game. Those two always play each other tough. But with what Trubisky's done, actually winning, Air Player of the Week, FedEx Air Player of the Week or whatever, 2 weeks ago, I don't know what it's been. I don't know if it's Trubisky himself. I don't know if Nagy's figured some things out to get them back to 2018 Chicago Bears offense. But Mitch Trubisky has looked completely different these last weeks. Everything that I said about Derek Carr, you can pretty much reverse it for Mitch Trubisky. I don't love the matchup here by any means with Green Bay. I think Green Bay has one of the better defenses, especially against the pass with my boy Jair Alexander shutting it down on half the field. But, if you're desperate for a quarterback and Mitch Trubisky's only on 21% of the leagues, I don't know what your quarterback situation would be where, you're looking for a guy. I know a lot of people just like to go on a week-to-week basis, stream. If for some reason, you had a quarterback get hurt, I don't know what the situation would be. But if you're digging deep, I think you could do a lot worse than Mitch Trubisky right now riding a hot streak.
Yeah, so I just double checked. Ryan Tannehill is only owned in about 52% of leagues.
Crazy.
Crazy. He's going against the Houston Texans this week, 27th ranked defense. He's been nothing short of a quarterback once it's taking over, like I pointed out earlier. 17 points has been the lowest output he's had since taking over. He takes really solid care of the ball. Only one game where he hasn't thrown multiple touchdowns. So there's a lot to like about Ryan Tannehill. If he's still somehow available in your leagues, go pick him up right now.
Yeah. Yep.
Crazy.
I'm starting Ryan Tannehill this week in the league, and my other quarterback is actually Dak Prescott. So, at the beginning of the year, with the way things were looking, I didn't think I'd be saying that, but here we are.
Yeah, fantasy's weird, man. It's a perfect game for imperfect people.
Well, if you remember, one of the first quotes that we said on here, was you're not going to win or lose your league at the draft. You're going to draft a completely different team than what you're going to finish with. Nobody drafted Ryan Tannehill.
Right.
And here he is. Okay, so at the running back position, this is more about just opportunity. Patrick Laird, the running back for Miami, goes against the Giants this week. Owning just 32% of leagues. Actually, has some pretty decent pass-catching chops coming out of Stanford. He catches a lot of passes. So, if you're in a PPR league, he obviously at least brings somewhat of a decent floor to your team. I would not want to use him as my RB1 or 2, but if you're looking for a flex play, not a bad matchup by any means, go against the Giants. And with the opportunity that this guy has, there's no other running back for the Dolphins. That's why we're talking about Patrick Laird, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about him if there was literally anybody else in that backfield, but there's not, so it's him. So great opportunity here. He's going to touch the ball 15 to 20 times against the Giants, so it only just 32% of leagues.
One of the Dolphins beat writers I follow actually is starting him this week in fantasy football. So it'll be interesting. Obviously I think those people know a little bit more better of the situation than we do. But yeah, if Patrick's getting all the recommendations and pickups from ESPN, then obviously there's got to be something behind it to warrant it. My guy is going to be Raheem Mostert. owned in
Yep.
45% of ESPN leagues. It's championship week. You need big performances from somebody. Mostert has had 22 and 24-point outings the last 2 weeks, respectively. He's the hot hand in the backfield right now. You got to ride the hot hand, and going into this Atlanta Falcons matchup. If the 49ers offense is anything like we've seen the past couple weeks, and I feel like Mostert can definitely reproduce the magic that he has the last couple of weeks. So we'll see. It's kind of a boom or bust with him this week. I don't necessarily want to say bust just because I still feel like he's going to get quality touches. But yeah, you're really making on him repeating again.
Yeah, see, he's owned in about 60% of Yahoo leagues, which is the only reason I didn't throw him on here.
Gotcha.
Wasn't for loader ownership, but he's owned in under 50% of ESPN, so definitely needs to be rostered, in my opinion. At the wide receiver position, I want Darius Slayton here, wide receiver for the Giants. Goes against Miami this week. Had a huge first half before doing pretty much nothing in the second half. But if I'm the Giants right now, I'm going back and watching tape on that game and saying, Eli, do you see what you did in the first half with this guy? Let's see more of that. He caught 6 passes for over 125 yards and 2 touchdowns just in the first half. Owning just 45% of Yahoo leagues. They go against Miami this week. Mouthwatering matchup, obviously, no Howard there to shadow him, and he wouldn't be anyway because you have guys like Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard taking away the pressure from him. But, yeah, it's just been nice to see. The first half was actually very cool to watch. Eli Manning coming back in. No idea what his future holds, but to come back in and start that game and the way that they started off, at least in the first half, before things kind of went off the rails in the second. But Darius Slayton, this isn't like the first week that he's had a very good game. You
Right.
can find points in the season where he looks like he's a guy that can break out. So he's got a couple breakout games on his resume. I don't think that he's a bad pick here. Wouldn't be super comfortable necessarily, throwing him in my roster. If I wasn't that desperate, if you're like a 3 receiver league and you start a flex, then maybe you're using him there. But if it's 2 receivers in a flex, I'm not sure that I would want Darius Slayton here. But listen, I still think that you could do a lot worse. So he should probably be owned if you're looking for another receiver.
I completely agree. This isn't the first and probably not the last time we're going to hear Darius Slayton's name popped up. He's productive. Eli Manning found that out last week, and hopefully he can keep that going and continue that for him. My receiver is going to be A.J. Brown, owned in 55% of ESPN leagues. I go against the Houston Texans this week. He's been the beneficiary of Ryan Tannehill's success. He had 23 and 33-point weeks the last 2 out of 3 weeks. He's basically everything we thought Corey Davis was going to be for this Titans offense, and it seems like he's Ryan Tannehill's guy. They have that connection there, and we've seen firsthand Pittsburgh what a special quarterback-receiver connection can do.
Yeah, 100%. Tight end.
Yikes.
I went with Tyler Higbee here.
Same.
Goes against Dallas, owned 41% of Yahoo leagues. Last 2 weeks, sans Gerald Everett, he's got 20 points and 15 points. So, being the tight end one there, at least for the time being. I'm not sure what Gerald Everett's status is for this week going against Dallas. But, with the weeks that Higbee's strung together, I still think you got to have a way to figure him into the offense in some capacity. Going against Dallas here, a team that, so up and down, a roller coaster, but you would think should be able to somewhat keep pace, so LA should be throwing the ball. But we'll see. At this point, you talk about tight end position, guys that aren't on most rosters, there's just not much out there, so.
Yeah, Higbee is only owned in 90% of ESPN leagues. He was my fantasy waiver wire tight end pickup as well. 23 and 18 points in PPR leagues in ESPN in the last 2 weeks. Basically, everything you said, he's taken over the tight end position in Los Angeles. Not only that, but he's became one of Jared Goff's go-to targets, and he certainly proved that he can be successful. So we'll see if Goff can continue that trend in the next couple of weeks for the playoffs.
Yep. Okay. So, all right.
Let's get to it.
Fantasy impact players. So, you're looking at the rest of the season, last couple of weeks, whatever it might be, however long your fantasy season lasts. As Donnie mentioned, maybe you're playing a championship this week. Don't know, but take a couple guys at each position, one guy at each position that we think is going to be a guy that you can ride to a championship. And I'm looking at the quarterback position. Donnie mentioned earlier in the show what this guy's been doing. Jimmy Garoppolo here goes against Atlanta and the LA Rams to finish his season. With everything that the Niners offense has been doing, Jimmy Garoppolo is really coming into his own. As you mentioned, obviously he was given the bag when he went to San Fran, so he's starting to earn that now. San Fran's having a fantastic season. I know a lot of people, at least on the outside, were saying that's, not necessarily to Jimmy Garoppolo's credit. Pretty much wanting to give credit to everybody besides Jimmy Garoppolo, but he's been very good the last couple weeks. I think you can argue that his game against New Orleans is the best game of his career to this point. So, finished up a season with Atlanta and the LA Rams. I really like his outlook for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I like Garoppolo as well. And my quarterback actually has one of the matchups that he has the last 2 weeks. My quarterback's going to be Gardner Minshew. Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback has the Oakland Raiders and the Atlanta Falcons coming up the next 2 weeks. He has completely revitalized that offense. Nick Foles went in there after he got healthy and looked like complete dog shit. So obviously Gardner Minshew, was the quarterback they were supposed to have the entire time. He has a really strong running game to his system. We've seen what he can do. We've seen the numbers he can put up. You have receivers such as D.D. Westbrook and DJ Chark you're able to throw the ball to. So, we've seen it. We've seen it happen this year. It's just a matter of Gardner continuing to, produce the magic he has. And what better defense to go up against than the Raiders and the Falcons, respectively.
Yep. I like it. Minshew Mania. Coming back. Okay, so maybe one a little bit outside the box here for my running back. But he's been, top 15 play for most of the season. I'm doing Chris Carson here. Finishes up with the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals his next 2 weeks, which Carolina Panthers, bottom 10 in terms of giving up points to running backs, and obviously the Arizona Cardinals, not a very good defense, more so against the pass, but you can run the ball against them too. Even, Sunday we saw the Steelers have some success on the ground. Benny Snell losing a fumble was really the only gaffe there, but look at how explosive a guy like Kareth White looked against them. So,
yep.
I think that there's ample opportunity on the run game for guys like Chris Carson, who is a very good back. I don't think enough people talk about that.
Yeah, Chris Carson was actually my running back as well.
Oh, wow.
Has, like you pointed out, matchups against the Panthers and the Cardinals. I mainly focused on Rashard Penny being out. Penny looks to be out for the rest of the season. It's the Chris Carson show, an offense that loves to run the football. They trust Chris Carson to catch the football as well. We've seen that with the amount of pass catches that he has, and as long as he can stop fumbling, Chris Carson is a fringe top 6 running back from week to week. Just depending on his usage. But like I pointed out just a few seconds ago, the Seahawks would love to run the football. So he's got really good matchups. He's the only running back in that backfield. I'm not too worried about CJ Proslice there. Chris Carson is the guy to fire up in the playoffs.
I'm with you. You know what? To be honest, I hadn't even really factored the Penny situation into that. But that's an absolutely good point. If there wasn't already enough ample opportunity for Chris Carson, that's only going to increase from here on out. So
right. No, completely agree.
My wide receiver, we kind of already talked about the situation. I think he's going to thrive under it, but Chris Godwin here. Going to get ample opportunity without Mike Evans, and they finish with Detroit and Houston. 2 very burnable secondaries, very poor defenses overall. It's going to be interesting to see. In Tampa Bay, they're only a game under 500. They've had a very up and down season, but they've shown that they can put up points. Jameis Winston, when he's on his game, can put up points. He might turn the ball over 3 times, but he's also going to throw 4 touchdowns. That's the type of quarterback he is. He's a gunslinger, for better or for worse, for your team. He'll take those risks every single time. But I really like Chris Godwin overall. I love him even more because of these matchups against Detroit and Houston to finish the season.
No, really good matchups, and Chris Godwin with Mike Evans has been producing at enormous rates. So I can only imagine the targets are going to go up, and we'll see what he can do with those. My wide receiver is going to be DJ Chark. If I'm going to point out, Gardner Minshew's potentially successful playoff schedule, with the secondaries of Oakland and Atlanta, I think DJ Chark is going to benefit huge from those. He's a top 8 fantasy receiver this year. The Jaguars haven't exactly been, what's the right word, competitive this year. But nonetheless, DJ Chark continues to put up points week after week. He has Gardner Minshew back, and it looks like for good for the rest of the season. As long as that connection can stay there, I think DJ Chark is one of the under the radar receivers that people need to look out for.
Now, here's the question I have: is he going to play this week?
He should. I didn't see anything that said he was potentially going to be out this week. Do you have an injury update for us?
Well, he was in a walking boot, and he was originally labeled week to week, but Marone said he was pushing to play, so I wasn't sure what exactly that meant. But with it being Wednesday, even if he didn't practice, this would be the day that he didn't. So I don't know if today's like a good indicator of that.
No, you're absolutely right. Usually it's the Thursday, Friday practices that are a good indicator. He didn't practice today. I'm reading up on it right now. So he's still considered a day-to-day. And it looks like he might not actually play.
Okay, well, I completely agree with everything you said. As a DJ Chark owner, I can definitely attest to what he's done this year.
If DJ Chark isn't playing this week, fire up D.D. Westbrook then.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a different receiver. He operates mainly in the slot, but yeah, I mean, he would become the number one guy there, and the opportunities without DJ Chark, they're going to be ample. As we mentioned, look at what Chris Godwin's going to do without Mike Evans. Now, obviously, D.D. Westbrook's not Chris Godwin, to somebody. But yeah, he's going to be getting the targets. And then at the tight end position, I went with Zach Ertz here. I mean, I mentioned what he had done over the last 5 weeks, 4 of those being very elite performances, and he finishes with Washington, and then Dallas, who, you can talk about Dallas's defense is actually, a pretty good defense in the NFL. They've taken a step back this year as opposed to last year, but they give up the 11th most points to tight ends, and that's, most weeks playing the average tight end. I'm talking about them seeing Zach Ertz here, who's a top 3 tight end. So I think that Zach Ertz is definitely the tight end that you want to have to win you a fantasy championship going against Washington, who ranks in the bottom, I think, 7 going against tight ends, and then Dallas, who's number 11.
Yeah, for everybody who drafted Zach Ertz, they're certainly hoping and, banking on the fact that you're going to be right this time. So we'll see. We'll see if he's actually on board and ready to produce like he's supposed to. My tight end is a complete dice roll. I will either see con pictures or I will have people engrave my name on trophies such as this. My tight end is going to be Greg Olsen, Carolina Panthers tight end. He has Seattle and Indianapolis coming up. Both are bottom 12 in terms of limiting tight ends, the fantasy points. Such a huge dice roll. Greg Olsen is not going to go out and get you a 30-point game. Not going to happen. But the matchups are there. The somewhat double-digit consistency is there. Like I said earlier, if we're going through our top 5, you have the Ertz, Kittle, and Kelsey, and then you have everybody else. So purely going off matchups, I think Greg Olsen could potentially be a league winner for you.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right, so once again, another new segment: buy or sell. Do you buy or sell Drew Lock being a top 10 play again this week?
Man, for as good as he looked, I gotta sell it. I think Kansas City's defense is on the up and up. I think they're finally starting to figure things out. Drew Lock is a gunslinger, a true gunslinger at that, and he has thrown a lot of questionable balls. Some of them he's threaded through. Others should have been picked off. We'll see. Teams. We always see a quarterback come into the league. He'll have a nice couple of games, and teams get film on him, take a shot, because I've said that like 10 times this episode. Teams will get film on him, and then they'll start to figure out his tendencies, and then they'll develop game plans to adhere to those. So I gotta say no. I don't think he repeats as a top 10 fantasy quarterback this week.
Okay, I think I would tend to agree with you. However, I do absolutely love the idea of, if Drew Lock can keep it up, because I'm a big Cortland Sutton guy, so from that standpoint, I would love to see that connection just keep rolling.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was impressed with Drew Lock whenever I saw him down in Mobile last year. Just the confidence, the swagger he has. He looked like the best quarterback there, and I think I don't want to say he's the perfect guy for Denver, but I do think he might be one of the best quarterbacks that John Elway has drafted since taking over.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's about time John Elway found a quarterback, so here's to hoping it's the one.
Yeah, really. So buy or sell, Mitch Trubisky is a top 5 quarterback this week versus the Green Bay Packers. You already kind of answered this question, but he had 8 points in his last outing versus the Packers. Granted, that was week 1, and the Bears' offense looks night and day compared to then.
Yeah, and you know what? We haven't been able to bring him up much because of Mitch Trubisky's play, but Allen Robinson is one of the most underappreciated players in this league. I'll go as far as saying he's the most underappreciated player in his position, but just overall in this league as well. I love Allen Robinson. Where did he go to college?
The Cotton Bowl team, Penn State.
No, but I love Allen Robinson. Mitch Trubisky, if you're going to go based off the last 2 weeks, looks like he could potentially fall in the top 5. But Green Bay's defense is not, a bad team. Like, they're not a bad defense. It's not a good matchup for him, really. Allen Robinson could very well see a lot of Jair Alexander. Allen Robinson will win a couple of those battles, if you will, against him, but I don't think he wins the war overall, and I don't think that Mitch Trubisky will be a top 5 play against them.
I have to agree. As good as Chicago's offense is like in the last couple of weeks, it's going to be another tough divisional game. I don't fully trust Mitch Trubisky with the keys to the car quite yet. So we'll see. It might be the pessimist in me just watching the Chicago Bears, but I'm not ready to crown Mitch Trubisky just due to the up and down nature of his season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have him as my waiver wire quarterback because he's only owned in 23% of leagues, but by no means would I feel comfortable if I had to throw him into my lineup.
No.
Running back, buy or sell Derrick Henry as a top 5 back this week. Well, I mean,
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
No.
I was just saying. We did the top 5, so, and you had him in there. I was curious if you would, because I know where overall you've stood on Derrick Henry. I mean, we've kind of seen that he's kind of taken that and run with it and changed your mind, because how can you not with the way that he's played? But yeah.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for people like us who do a fantasy football show, fantasy writers, and pretty much every fantasy football player there is, you don't have to be married to your opinions. Because you believe something, it's okay to receive new information and then change your mind on it. That's exactly what Derrick Henry's done for me. Personally, I'm not going to draft him just because I'm weird like that. I don't necessarily like him. It's hard to dispute numbers, though, and Derrick Henry has done nothing but put up numbers. So I do think he finishes top 5 this week again.
Yeah, as you mentioned, that's just one of the. This isn't even fantasy related, but just talk about what you just said. It's one of the weirdest things to me, like the hills that people are willing to die on. Like, why do people think that you have to be set in your way of thinking of something? If something happens that could change your mind, I feel like you have to be able to adapt with anything that you do, and that 100% includes the way that you view fantasy football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to be stuck in your ways, then you're going to end up hurting yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so what was yours, running back?
Buy or sell, Todd Gurley hitting 20 points for the first time since week 4.
God, how many times are you going to be Todd Gurley this year on these things? No.
Sorry, man. He hit 20 points last week for the first time since week 4. Does he repeat another 20-point performance?
I mean, see, it's tough for me because the way that the Rams offense has transitioned, it seems like they're implementing him more and more into the offense. And maybe that was the plan all along, was, with the knee thing. We don't want to put too much pressure on those at the beginning of the season. We're going to, rely on him down the stretch when we need him most. They also probably thought they'd be in a much better position standings-wise at this point. Man. See, I don't have him as a top 5 play, and I feel like 20 points will put him there. So I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. His usage seems to have gone up in the last couple of weeks, and that's a testament to Sean McVay just getting his head out of his ass and getting the Rams money worth. But I just don't think he repeats another 20-point performance.
That's a lot. I mean, who does he think he is? Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't point related or anything, but do you foresee Chris Godwin, or do you buy or sell Chris Godwin continuing the pace that he's on without Mike Evans?
Yeah, I do. I think he's just too talented of a receiver not to. I think he was already getting a lot of recognition with Mike Evans on the field. Not that Mike Evans wasn't drawing double teams, because he was. But Chris Godwin's just another animal. He's I don't want to say a complete receiver, but man, like he looks to be a like wide receiver 1A for the Buccaneers. It looks like they have two number one wide receivers. I absolutely. I think he can do it. I think he can continue the pace. Not that I expect him to go out and get 40 points every game, but Chris Godwin is very capable of continuing what he's done with or without Mike Evans.
Yeah, I'm not saying combine the stat lines that Godwin and Evans were putting up.
Oh yeah,
and give it all to Godwin, but yeah, just where he has been continuing on that trajectory for himself. You're going to be relying on somebody else in that offense probably to step up if you're going to continue to go the way that offense has. But whether they do overall or not, yeah, I'm a believer at Chris Godwin, and I'd buy that.
Good though. So Robert Woods has strung together consecutive 20-point performances. He's dropped 24 and 30 the last 2 weeks. He hasn't dipped below 15 points since week 8 when he's been healthy. Do you buy or sell him dropping below 15 points this week against the Dallas Cowboys?
15 points.
It's tough for me because Woods. I'm a Robert Woods owner,
yeah, me too.
And I've seen games where he lost, and seen games where he's caught 10.
Yeah.
You know
what? That's like right on the cusp of where you said 15 points. I mean, that's like right on the cusp of him potentially being a top 5 guy himself. I'm going to say, that could be like top 7 or I'll say he does. I think that he'll be like wide receiver 8 this week, somewhere in that range.
I think he'll hit right below it. And I just don't think he can continue to be as consistent as he has been, just because he hasn't been able to continue that trend all year.
Yeah, and there's like so many mouths to feed in that offense. If a guy strings together a couple weeks like Robert Woods has, or like we saw Cooper Kupp do, you're just wondering, like, is it going to be him again next week? Because
right.
You have no idea, like, when is Brandon Cooks going to really mix into the offense? We mentioned that they're getting Todd Gurley more involved. So, yeah, that's kind of a toss-up for me. But, just being a Robert Woods owner and being optimistic, I think that he'll get, like, right around that point range. So, just to say I'll buy it because I'm an owner, yeah, I'll buy it.
Good deal. Yeah, we'll our first disagreement. But,
I've talked about this connection a lot. So, buy or sell Zach Ertz and Carson Wentz continuing what they've done for at least the next 2 games to finish out the fantasy season.
That's tough. That's tough because the same logic I just applied to Robert Woods, you can apply that to Zach Ertz. We've seen the good and bad this year. Which one's going to show up? Just going off of the current trajectory. I don't think Zach Ertz scores too many more 30-point games. So I do think Zach Ertz continues to, provide top 5 tight end numbers. And by that standard, yeah, I do think that he will continue to find success with Carson Wentz. But I don't necessarily think he's going to be the overall tight end 1 when everything's all said and done.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's the tight end 1 for the rest of the season for these last 2 games overall. So I think with the way that he finishes up with that schedule, I think that he'll be at the top of his position for the next 2 weeks.
Gotcha. So I have kind of a lame tight end buy or sell, but I have a bonus wide receiver buy or sell, which I think is very interesting, but I want to get your opinion on. So I'll get my tight end 1 out of the way. Noah Fant, buy or sell, a top 10 finish as a fantasy tight end this week. So he's only hit about 20 points twice this year. Granted, a 20-point performance would probably put him in the top 5. But do you buy or sell him being a top 10 tight end this week?
I love Noah Fant. Had the Steelers not traded up to grab Devin Bush, I would have honestly rather have had Noah Fant over one of the cornerbacks. and he's really starting to put together. People talked a lot about first-year tight ends were really not doing much. They need that first off season and to come into the second year with a whole off season of that offense and the playbook and everything to incorporate themselves. But Noah Fant has made those adjustments and started producing in the same year that he was drafted, which is rare. At such a depleted position where, you talked about the guys that are obviously going to be there, Kittle, Kelsey, Ertz, Mark Andrews, Hooper, Waller, Hunter Henry. It's like, who's after those 8? You mentioned Greg Olsen, if he comes back, would probably be in there. I don't know who else I'd put in there. I mean, I think Noah Fant has a case right around, 8, 9, 10 spot. And just going based off the potential there, I'm going to buy it. I think that Drew Lock, that quarterback switch, is really going to help him for these next 2 games. I think that Denver at this point, obviously they don't have any playoff aspirations. They're just going to be throwing it around, seeing what they have in that offense. That young core on offense with Drew Lock, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Phillip Lindsay. So, yeah, I'll buy that.
For sure, yeah. I think I'll buy that as well, just because the lack of depth at the tight end position. Like you said, Noah Fant has, definitely came on at the latter end of the season. We'll see if Drew Lock is the magical elixir that really gets him going and pushes him into that top tight end category. My bonus one for you, it's a very heavily debated topic. Just want to get your opinion on it. Buy or sell Odell Beckham Jr. being a top 5 receiver this week. So he has a sports hernia that he's been dealing with, and the surgery is kind of a hot button issue right now for him, whether or not he's going to get it. He's going against the Arizona Cardinals, which is a prime matchup for any receiver. So the talent is there. However, you have the hernia that's been holding him back a little bit, and then you just have the overall lack of involvement from the Cleveland Browns offense that also is going against him. But it's basically opportunity versus matchup. Which one do you got?
I'm not buying him as a top 25. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just it's so weird. I mean, we're sitting here talking about, this is a perfect example. Talk about how things change during the course of a season, because at the beginning of the year, we're talking about this is going to be Baker Mayfield's, obviously just his first full season, but Baker Mayfield's a top 5 fantasy quarterback. OBJ's going to have his best season, and here we are. That hasn't happened. OBJ has 2 touchdowns on the season. I can't buy anything OBJ related in Cleveland. It's been a bad relationship. I don't even want to call it a marriage, because I don't think that they're going to be together very long. And it's just, I don't like the way things have gone there. It's obviously, magnified because of the season that they've had compared to the aspirations that they've had, but it hasn't worked out to this point. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, they really couldn't get on the field together much in the offseason.
Yeah, I think he kind of needs a fresh start somewhere else. So I think he needs to get healthy. If he does decide to have the surgery or not, just get him healthy, get him in an environment where he is undoubtedly the number 1 receiver. Because we all thought that Jarvis Landry's production was going to drop, when in fact it's kind of stayed the same, if not gone up a little bit.
Yeah. Which, I mean, when you talk about the type of player that Jarvis Landry is, I think that, the floor's always been there, but does he bring the explosiveness? But yeah, Jarvis Landry's been the number 1 guy in that receiving game, which in an offense that features Odell Beckham Jr. would really surprise you if somebody told you at the beginning of the season.
Completely agree.
Yeah, but anyway, let us know if after listening to this how you guys did in your fantasy matchups, because we're going to be curious. How many do you have? What's going on with your leagues?
So I am out in my main league. Yep. So I keep this bad boy for another 2 more weeks, and somebody else is going to take it. Yeah. So I'm out in that league. My work league, I lost in the first round of the playoffs last week. I just got my shit packed in. However, I did help draft 2 teams this year. One of them is in the championship coming up this week, and then the other advanced to the second round of the playoffs this week as well. So, kind of clinging on to those for hope. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, Wish you guys the best of luck for everybody that's listening. This has been Around the 412. We are part of the Pod Hub Network, sponsored by Teach Barbershop, located at 180 Brighton Avenue in Rochester, PA. Open 10 to 7 Tuesday through Friday and Saturday 9 to 4. Every Tuesday, Christian does $5 off for military personnel, first responders, nurses, and he's got Teach Christmas Drive going on right now. You take over any monetary donation, toys, clothes, Christmas cards, whatever it might be, you get $5 off your next hair service. All those things go to the Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. And we got Rocking Around the 412 as Around the 412, year 2 going on, running until Saturday, so just a couple more days for you guys to get involved with that. The pinned tweet on our Twitter, we give you guys all the information, take you straight to the GoFundMe. We found our 3 families, so any donations are going straight to those 3 families to provide the kids Christmas gifts this Christmas, which is an awesome thing. I can't wait to do it. I can't wait to share with you guys how everything goes. I'm going to be taking a bunch of pictures and videos. And yeah, so Saturday we're going to buy the stuff, but you have until Monday really to get involved. We're going to be buying stuff after Saturday. It's just the big shopping day for us. But once again, Around the 412, sponsored by Teach Barbershop, part of the Pod Hub Network. You can find us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, or right over here at twitch.tv/Around the 412. And until next time, bye-bye.